is only a transition to a different sphere of consciousness. Carol Ann is not like those she's with. She is a living presence in their spiritual earthbound plane.
Hello and welcome to episode 50 of the Talking to the Dead podcast. This week we're going to follow a similar format to the previous few episodes. And the first part, I want to just discuss some of the things that have been happening in the world, some of the things that I've been told to look out for in previous episodes that indicate things are changing. And then the second part, I'm be very happy to try to contact the past mother of one of my listeners, Jen, and her mother is known as Jenny, and the lady in question is known as Debbie. So I will try to help Debbie, and let's see what happens then. But before we get into that, let's have a quick little recap of some of the things that I've noticed, and a little explanation from me also as to why I'm highlighting some of the things that I'm about to do. Okay, so some of the big things that really have grabbed my attention this week. Just something funny, I mentioned to listeners last week how David Gilmour had actually responded to a written question that I'd posed to him in the Guardian newspaper during the beginning of his recent tour. And he'd confirmed to me that, yes, quite often music comes through to him from somewhere else. And he, although an atheist, hates to admit it, which was, I thought, a very interesting choice of phrase, because there seems to be something about people who are convinced atheists or people who think all of this is such nonsense. They don't want to really recognize that there could be something to it. But I'm sorry about that. I hope that my podcast is doing something to change all of that. But yes, it was interesting to hear from David Gilmour. And this week, it was very interesting. I read an interview with Paul Simon of the famous Simon and Garfunkel fame, plus his own amazing solo career. And he was talking about probably the most famous song that they released as Simon and Garfunkel. And it was called The Sound of Silence. And this is just what he said in the interview. He said, "The Sound of Silence was the first song I wrote which seemed to come from some place that I didn't inhabit," says Simon, now 82. At the age of 23, it was unusual, well beyond my age and abilities. Then it happened again throughout my writing. Bridge Over Troubled Water was another song that came mysteriously. So did a lot of Graceland. I wrote Slip Slidin' Away in 20 minutes. Usually it takes me a couple of months to get a song. There are other examples, like Darling Lorraine, of songs that came from some place else. A mystery, you could call it. Well, Paul, I don't think that's a mystery. I think what has been confirmed again and again and again is that people of a musical ability, and that will be something that was probably something they chose before they inhabited their current life, have that ability to connect, and they can connect to that creative realm that's in another dimension. And once you're in that dimension, you have access to everything that has ever been, ever will, and is simultaneously, and in a very complicated way, which I can't even begin to try to explain. But you do have that ability. And therefore, if you are able to understand music, or maybe even if you don't need to understand music, you can just channel a tune, it's something that's going to happen to you. Without getting too far ahead of myself, that actually segues quite nicely into a couple of emails that I've had with Jen, who's asking me later on to contact her deceased mother, Debbie. Jen was actually interested in how I do what I do. And again, it's quite similar to people who are musical and who are channeling music. And I've obviously found that by channeling the music that's been sent down to me through Neil Peart. But most interesting, I tried to explain to her how I feel psychic stuff works. And again, I wrote to her and I said that I believe it's mainly because everything has happened. So if I'm going to contact Debbie, it's because I've already contacted Debbie and had this whole conversation already. Now, to me, in a linear world, I'm about to have it. But in the world that Debbie inhabits and you inhabit when you're in a different dimension, you can see everything that's happened before, everything that's happening now, and everything that will happen in the future. Plus, you have this possible futures. So I said that in my case, I think everything that has happened or will or is happening is available to us once we have left this human dimension. And in addition, it seems that the mere thought processes we have generated create possible futures, past, as well as shaping the present through the decisions we make. All that is happening to me, I think, is that Titan enables me to access that event, that of chatting with her mother, in my time, like a direct connection. And that's it. And she was quite intrigued as to what information I would need in order to be able to contact her. And I said, nothing really. I don't need any information really beyond perhaps her first name. Perhaps that's the best thing, because it's not as if I am trying to find her name in a phone book of billions and billions of people. It's something that connection will come through either directly through my guardian, or it'll just come through anyway because I'm connecting to an event that's already happened. So it's not a very hard thing to do. It's very, very easy if you trust that that's the way things happen. And I rather flippantly used it, Alexa, as an example. I said, if you have an Amazon Alexa device, it's like me saying, hey, Titan, let me speak to Debbie. And immediately that connection will open up. And that's because it should open up, because it's happened before. It's not hard to find. And I'm just bringing what's happened before, if you want to see it in the past terms, into my present. So there we are. So that's really pretty similar to the way music is being channeled. And I think very interesting to have that understanding, I think. But so too today, and the things that I've noticed as well. Obviously, tremendous amount of discussion in the last week about weather events. And that was something that Titan and others said to me would be of particular importance. We've just had a huge Hurricane Helene going through America, I've read. And right now, as I'm speaking, Hurricane Milton is a Category 5 storm that is about to hit Tampa, Florida, and that area of Florida. It's considered now to be probably one of the biggest storms ever to hit the United States of America. They're calling it the storm of the century. More than 1 million people have been displaced from the area in order to get safety. I read a newspaper, and it said Hurricane Milton is supercharged into a monster 180-mile-per-hour storm, and it was so quick that experts have called for it to be given an unprecedented Category 6 status. This is nothing short of astronomical. So I really hope, obviously, if you're in that storm, it's certainly nothing to be light about, and I think it's going to be pretty awful. I think Hurricane Helene has already killed a lot of people, and sadly it would seem that Hurricane Milton is going to do the same. And again, I'm afraid that was part of what was said to me a few weeks ago. These very unpleasant events that are taking place around the world are all a sort of prelude to something. And more and more people, I'm sad to say, are possibly going to be hurt or losing their lives. But it's a wake-up call. People need to be paying attention to what is happening around them. As far as the issues that are going on in the Middle East, I suppose it couldn't be any worse. there have been attacks by Israel and Lebanon. Lebanon has been firing missiles into Israel. Iran is involved. They launched a monumental attack last week. And as we speak again, we're waiting for Israel to launch their counterattack, which by all accounts could be massive and significant. And I read today that Iran has warned that if the Gulf states allow Israel, or I suppose America and the allies, to use airspace or to use equipment or to use anything like runways, they would consider that to be basically an act of war against those states as well. So just in a simple statement, the regime in Iran are threatening to widen this way beyond Israel and turn it into a full-blown Middle East and then United States and then NATO, a full-blown world war. And it does seem, as I'm moving on in the weeks here, we're getting so close to a war that will be undescribable. And all the signs seem to be happening. Now, from the esoteric to the science fiction, you might say, I noticed a few weeks ago, but obviously it happened this week, there was a lot of discussion about a third moon suddenly making itself present in orbit around our planet. Now, this is only the first or second time in our memory, I think, that an asteroid, a large asteroid, it's about the size of a bus, has not impacted the planet, but rather been caught by the planet's gravity, but also is affected by the physical forces that enable it to end up orbiting. Although it doesn't seem to orbit so much, it seems to have a strange sort of positioning orbit, almost like a stationary orbit, but it moves a bit. I'm not a scientist, so I really don't know how it works. But it's sitting there, apparently, and it's going to sit there, and they know precisely how long it's going to sit there. And then it's going to disappear again after a few months on its travels, apparently, around the sun. Now, I'm only picking this up because another listener of mine, Linda in Germany, had a dream, a very vivid dream, about the same time that I had my sort of psychic attack, and you could say almost my meltdown when I was initially warned about something huge was about to happen, and it really got me, and I was in a terrible state about it all. I was thinking of almost stopping this podcast because I didn't know how to react to this onslaught that was coming my way. But I obviously managed to realize what my purpose is now, and I feel much better about it. But Linda had a terrible dream, I believe. I may have got it wrong, Linda, but definitely she saw this vision of what looked like a spacecraft, an alien spacecraft that had suddenly taken up position above us in orbit. And this reminded me very much of that. So I just out of curiosity, and because I do have a very healthy skepticism of what the government and NASA and scientists are telling us of what's going on in the world a lot of the time now, I looked it up and I tried everywhere to find a decent real picture of this asteroid, this third moon. It's got a name. It was only discovered, I believe, this year. But nowhere. Absolutely nowhere. So I would invite you to go and look on Google. See if you can find a real picture of this asteroid, which conveniently is so high up and so small that even if you've got a really powerful home telescope, you're not going to see it. You're having to rely really on the government telling you that it's there. And people who have got these huge, enormous, in most cases probably state-funded telescopes and arrays. And of course, they would be very much susceptible to coercion and control by the government because that's how they get their funding, to be honest. But nowhere, there's nothing that I've seen that's a real picture. They're all artists' impressions or they're pictures of other asteroids. So I may be wrong, but I would be very interested if anybody did manage to find a picture of it. So what could that be? Could it in fact be a spaceship that's visiting us, that's part of this whole process? There was a huge asteroid or meteorite that came by a number of years ago It had a very strange name like Omagarubu or something, or Omagama, or something. I can't quite remember. And it came through our solar system, and it came comfortably far away actually from our planet. But it was tracked by NASA and many astronomers, and nobody could explain what it is. They tried to think it was an asteroid, but then more and more people started coming out and saying, well, it's not. It's actually a spacecraft. Now you can laugh at that if you want, but it eventually moved on at super speeds out of our solar system. But it was the first sort of interstellar object that's been recorded coming through our space, I think in recorded history. I'm not too sure. And there is still a lot of talk out there that, that was a bit of a cover-up. And in fact, it was far, far more than just a piece of rock flying through space. But, it's, I think, important for us to understand that there's an awful lot more to what I'm trying to tell you about UAPs and UFOs. I'm not doing this because I want you guys to be scared. I'm not here to try to explain what's going on with UFOs and little green men. That really isn't my thing. My podcast is not about UFOs. There's 100, 200 of those podcasts if you want to learn about what's happened in Roswell or what's happened in Area 51. I'm just interested in how more and more there's a confluence between the Talking to the Dead podcast and understanding exactly what the state of being dead is, and UAPs and UFOs. And that's why I'm talking about it. And I believe I'm supposed to talk about it because it's been revealed to me time and time again in this podcast that the dimensions that you go to when you're not physical anymore are, in fact, many and multitudinous. But obviously, a lot of aliens that we consider to be aliens who may well be out there do not come from another planet per se. They don't cross interstellar space. They are here right now, and that has come through to me in the podcast as well, and they have always been here. They are just not immediately visible because they exist in another dimension to ours. Now, so do dead people. They exist in another dimension. So what was, again, grabbing me this week was, I'll put the link to the YouTube interview down below, was a show that I've been listening to, Ross Coulthart, who's quite an interesting guy who's trying to get a lot of this information out there. He's a journalist. And he said that a whistleblower had come through another journalist. And this journalist, as you'll see if you watch the video, is absolutely convinced that the whistleblower is genuine. And this whistleblower is actually saying this week that there is a huge government cover-up, and it's within the Congress of the United States, and I'm sure within other government agencies. And the committee that was set up allegedly to allow whistleblowers to come forward and talk about what they have seen, which led to people like David Grush and the others, the pilots who actually saw the UAPs, the fighter pilots. And it's allowing more and more people to come forward who up till now have been imprisoned, if you like, by the Secrets Act, and also potentially losing their jobs because people would think they're mad. But this whistleblower is saying that it's been a while since we've heard Grush's testimony to Congress, and why is nothing happening about it? Well, he says that it's been a deliberate exercise on the part of some people in Congress, and of course powerful people, to try to stall all the disclosures that are going on. And he says the reason is that many people who've been involved in, and he discusses what sort of things they're trying to hide, which mainly are the reverse engineering of alien technology that has been acquired either through crashed vehicles or maybe given to us. They're trying to hide that, and they've always tried to hide it because, of course, they want to be solely in charge of that technology. They don't want to share it with other countries, although China and maybe Russia are also having their same programs. But another aspect, which is far more sinister, is that in order to maintain that cover-up for so long and with such tight security. It's obviously been important for these important people to have done many illegal things and probably terrible things in order to cover it up. They've potentially had people killed. They've ruined people's careers. They've lied to Congress, which is a crime in itself. So there's a huge amount of criminal stuff that's gone on by hiding this. And they're terrified of being prosecuted unless there's some sort of mass amnesty that's offered. This cover-up has been so big and so deep. This whistleblower, is, I think, likening it almost to what's gone on with the JFK murder. And, there's been so much talk, and I know it's a conspiracy theory, but there's been so much talk that the government was involved, and there's an awful lot of information that's been withheld to the public, and it's still withheld, and it's going to be withheld, I believe, for maybe another 50 years. Well, you think, why are you withholding that information? What are you trying to hide? And he, of course, said it's because so many of the people are alive who are involved, who don't want what was found in the investigations to come out. Now you wonder what is going to come out that could be so damaging to them. I'm not part of that scenario. It's not really my podcast. But, why is it important to me that we're talking about this in the Talking to the Dead podcast? Well, it seems increasingly obvious that these beings that are visiting the earth or are here are multidimensional beings, as we are. However, we only know this about ourselves at our death or by using some form of extrasensory power or astral travel. But these beings can clearly, in their multidimensional selves, be on similar dimensions as what we would call our souls or our dead bodies. Not our dead bodies, but our dead personalities. And they can communicate with them in the same way as I hope I can, and other mediums are trying. And they are basically able to communicate to us as living humans, but also to the people who've passed on. And therefore, that whole knowledge of that sort of communication would really, I think, rock our understanding of our place in the world and human existence that has been sent to us or sold to us as a particular way for thousands of years. If these multidimensional people are there, and our governments and the people in high places know that they can communicate with what we call our soul or entity, this shows you just how our lives and what we are on Earth is just such a tiny fragment of the reality of what really exists out there. And it would obviously, yes, blow a lot of people's minds. But if people in government and power know this, or a bit of this, then there is clearly a huge worry, this whistleblower has said, about the destabilization of things. Now, obviously, you could imagine that if you started telling people this type of information, how you do it, I don't know, but if you started telling them, and this is what I believe we're moving towards, it would cause a destabilization of world religions, because it would undermine the teachings of world religions to some respect. And it would also probably undermine world leadership as we know it, because people would see no need to defer to the authority of our traditional leaders if they are nothing in comparison to what's really going on around us. So that would, I would imagine, create a huge major reset of our human experience, our thousands of years of human experience. And I think more and more that I think about it, that is what's happening now. We are about to get to this really big reset where we're going to be given information that is going to be imminent. We're going to see it probably through multidimensional beings visiting us and making themselves known, and the government's going to have to admit to it. Or there's going to be so much happening in the world that the governments will just have to admit what's going on because they're being forced. Their hand is going to be forced by these multidimensional beings. And they're going to prove to us that these multidimensions exist. And, we are basically, I think, in a way, living in the death throes of the former world order. And we're going to be moving into, I hope, a wonderful new age where we will really find out what our place is in the scheme of things. And on my side, I'm really looking forward to that. I think that's going to be the most wonderful time, a new epoch, hopefully, where we gain powers, we become more of what we are when we die, and people can really understand what happens and what the point of life is and what death really means. So that's why I think this is so important to me and why it's linked to UAPs, UFOs, as well as dead people. So just before we get to Debbie and Jen, I thought I would also just quickly bring you up to date with the reading I did for Mark last week and his father, Jim. And yeah, it was not a great success, to be honest, and I'm perfectly happy to admit that because I can only pass through what comes through to me. But he did listen to the episode, and Mark felt that his father really maybe didn't really give much to him that he could actually reckon with. I asked him if he felt anything felt relevant to him, and he said that a lot of it, most of it, in fact, didn't really hit for him. But he said that there were some tie-ins, but overall he felt the majority just didn't register with him, which is fine. I asked him what these tie-ins were because I'm more interested probably the sort of the hits that you might get, and he actually offered that probably the sort of hit that really meant something was that he explained that his father was an intellectual. He actually had a PhD, and he used the words here, consumed with academia and would isolate in his work sometimes. But the rest of the impression that I got from his father didn't seem to register at all. And I think really I can only say that, yes, I think probably the most important thing that came through to me, I think, was that his father seemed to have some form of regret because he'd isolated himself with work, and probably for all the right reasons. And I think in that respect, that was, if you like, the most important thing that came through for me. And obviously that has been recognized by Mark. The rest of it, such as names and things, didn't mean anything to Mark at all. But of course, we will never know really the people that he met in his work. I'm not terribly sure exactly what he did with his academia, but I presume he met lots of people. Maybe he met lots of adults and children, and maybe these were some of his favorite people. Who knows? But anyway, we move on and we try again. So after that, the last part of the podcast I wish to do, and I will obviously, as I normally do my protection rituals and get ready, and I will see if I can ask Titan to help me channel on behalf of Jen, and her mother calls her Jenny, Debbie. And I know nothing about Debbie at all. I really know nothing about Jen either. I asked her to not tell me anything, and she felt that was the best thing to do because obviously she's naturally a bit skeptic, as I am. And I think, the little you know about something, the better, because, if you do know something, you could always presume that your brain is going to take over and perhaps create something. Well, that can't happen in this case because I don't even know the last name of Debbie. I don't know where she lives. I know nothing. So there's no way that I could ever be accused of being a fraud in that respect, which I'm not interested in being. But just for her sake, I thought this was a fun thing to do. So I will see you back here in a while for me, and almost instantaneously for you. Okay, so I'm back now, and before Titan pops in to say hi, I want to tell you about some dreams and some thoughts that I've had, which I think are related probably to Debbie, or they might be related to Jen, or Jenny, as her mother would call her. Now, these dreams go as follows. Clearly, there was a nurse. I saw a nurse. I saw the blue outfit of a nurse. It certainly looked to me something medical, some sort of maybe a hospital nurse. But I saw the blue outfit. What came very strongly was teeth. I have no idea why. Either there was some sense of dentistry or teeth. There was a sense of a nursery school or school in some respect, or maybe even a Sunday school. There was a theatre feeling, a feeling of an actress. There was also a very strange image that I had of being in a car with someone and forgetting where the car that I had, or the person I'm inhabiting, had parked the car in this big car park. So this person was obviously taking me into a car park in order to pick up my car. But I had completely forgotten where I had parked my car. And there was a tremendous sense of panic. And it seemed like, I was looking for something. I really was looking for something. And like I've probably done that quite often with my car. There was a lovely sense of joy, and there were games with names, and there was a lot of singing, maybe even worship. These songs had rhymes, and there were lots of games with names. I can't say more than that. So those were the feelings I had. Okay, so I know that Titan is here. Titan isn't necessarily going to speak, I think. I think she's just there. I think she's going to do her best to bring someone forward to talk to me. So really, it's a question of asking if the person who's there, is she Debbie? The lady is there, but she's not sort of confirming her name, but I think, in fact, she's trying to give me the impression that names don't really matter. She is confirming that she loves singing. In fact, there's a lot of sense of religion and church. And she says that her whole family were very much connected to that, and that her daughter is also, Jen, is very connected to that. Now, Jen told me that her mother would know her as Jenny, which is quite interesting. And she's telling me that the Jenny side of it was not for any other reason than she used to like rhyming the names Jenny and Debbie. Okay, and she said sometimes that would be a lot of fun, and she would obviously even make games with that. And maybe that she feels that's where it's stuck from. Debbie, if it is indeed Debbie, is showing me shoes, but these are not just ordinary shoes. These are sort of walking shoes, and this is a memory that she's showing me of wearing these shoes, but also actually once they got incredibly dirty, she's saying, and they got very muddy and dirty, and she remembers having to spend a lot of time cleaning them. But she used to loved walking and used to love going outwards into the wilds, and maybe staying out in the wild. She enjoyed the natural world. She loved these sort of trips. She loved going on holiday. And she very much enjoyed, most of all, the discovery of things. She said she was very curious as a person, and really delighted in showing her children the wonders of discovery. And she's saying God's world, and the joys of God's creation. I think Debbie sounds to me clearly very Christian and very motivated by that. Singing songs, and probably church services, but not just church services. Going into places where there are a lot of people who perhaps don't have a church to them, and perhaps in some respect doing good works and helping people. It seems to be a very caring feeling here. Somebody who rejoiced in giving to people, and maybe even made a life's work out of helping in some way. I'm now getting an impression about something I'm going to talk about, because it seems to be connected to something I've thought about, and this is a thought I've got in my head, and Debbie, if it is you, is pushing me towards this thought. And this is very much in terms, I think, again, a sort of a Christian belief in angels and in demons. Debbie is saying that that she's been very interested in listening to what I've had to say about the origin of what we would call extraterrestrial life. And she's there only to confirm to me. And she really wants people to pay attention to this, that there isn't a great contradiction between the established religions and what is happening to the world now and the visitation of extra-dimensional people. She wants to stress that this is not a mutually exclusive thing, she says. You can't say that you cannot be Christian and believe in everything that I've been talking about, because it is exactly the way it is. She would want to go as far as saying that angels and demons are forms of higher beings that live on different dimensions, and they are not, if you like, angels and demons in the biblical sense. They are, as we've found before, the manifestations of either thoughts of harm or thoughts of good. And this is, she says, distinct from the thought of good and evil. She's saying to me she's always been fascinated in that conversation about the nature of goodness and the nature of evil. And as a person alive, she was very much a person who believed in the religious interpretation of it. But now where she is, she's come to realize that that is valid, but it's something so much more than that. It's something that is a representation of the goodness and the badness in people. And when a form of extraterrestrial, as we may say, comes to show themselves to us, as she says they have already, the people who have met them could sometimes come under the misapprehension that they could somehow be representative of angels and devils, because people are trying to put the information that they're seeing into pigeonholes that make it easier for them to understand. The shock of finding out that we are by far not alone in the world or in the universe, is somehow mitigated by trying to get it to fit within some of our religious doctrines. And that is not a bad thing if it makes people understand that the nature of good and evil, the nature of Jesus Christ, she's saying, or the nature of all world religions is based on multidimensional laws of the universe that exist across all spiritual planes. And the Christ figures and all religious figures in all religions are just examples of that universal truth of helping people and being good, which is ultimately the best manifestation of, she says, of an existence. She's drawing me to my candle that I have, and she's very interested in the fact that I light a candle, and she says that candles are very important to her as well, and she loves the light, and she loves the naturalness of candles as opposed to the modern things. She wants to point out also that she doesn't want people to worry about her. She knows that she had, in our terms, not a very easy finish to her life. I think she had cancer, and I think she had a lot of treatment and a lot of attempts to fight this cancer. But in the end, the cancer, and she said, "Look, you mustn't see it as if she'd lost this battle. It's not like that. She wasn't in a battle. It's a medical condition that affects the human body." And she says that she's very philosophical about it. We all have to die somehow, and we all will die. And she's telling me that I've been thinking that lately too, when I hear about all the people that I've grown up with and suddenly have died, and all the famous people. But she says that in fact you should be somehow pleased that everyone does die. But the wonderful thing is that she knows, and she would love everyone to know too, is that it isn't the end. And in terms of her belief that she had during her life, it was not far from the experience that she now has. She has the ability to somehow justify all the beliefs that she had in her life and reconcile them with what she is now discovering. And she says, if one thing is completely clear to her, is that it was certainly not in vain. It was a very good process, and is a reflection, again, of what are these universal things that exist on all planes of reality. She's wanting to take me up again on something I said earlier. She says that, again, I mustn't fall into the trap of thinking that the great reset that I talked about earlier is somehow going to devalue world religions. She says that mankind has done enough in its attempts to use and manipulate and destroy religions. They don't need any more help. Ultimately, if people's faith is so thin that seeing an extraterrestrial or some advanced species or some alternative element, some alternative entity that lives in a different dimension, if our religions are so fragile that they could be destroyed by the discovery of things long before the birth of Christ or of any of our current religious figures, know that you're seeing it wrong, because she says there is a purpose to everything. She's saying, in a way, she would like to say it is God, but it's not. It's not God as you would understand it. It is that collective consciousness, that manifestation of all that there is, the knowledge, the experience of limitless, numerous billions and billions of people and other creatures and other entities. It is all together in a very tight, she says, a very tight interwoven ball of string, she says. And you could pull on that string and you would never be able to unravel the ball. But that ball, if you like, is God. And being part of God is being somewhere along that string. And everyone is on that road. Everyone is part of that string. And when one dies, however one believed or whatever you did in your lives, you're always back to the same. And therefore, all we did in our life was for a purpose. And obviously the best purpose is to be good and to show love and to help. But even if you've come to do something other, she says that in her life she tried to help people. She really wanted to help the people who were not well, who weren't doing well, who needed spiritual help. But I said that's the same now. She says that she can do that in her capacity where she is now, and she's found a calling again, and she would like her family, she would like Jenny to know that she's carrying on her good work, she says. So please don't worry. And her good work, she says, is also looking over her family from where she is, amongst you, with you always, and encouraging you never to stop and never to doubt your faith. Okay, thank you. It's a very strong message, Debbie. Thank you very much. And I hope that it means something to Jenny, or Jen, as she's known to her friends. So with that, I will leave you. I've just seen how, because I'm recording this a day later than yesterday, when I started the podcast, I've seen that the Hurricane Milton has passed through Florida. Sadly, people have died. But from what I can see, that the destruction is not quite as bad as it could have been. But nevertheless, I really hope that, especially if you're living in Florida, you get back to your homes and your loved ones soon. I feel Debbie knows that the music I'm going to play on the way out is the final recording that Esther's done. She's re-recorded it. It's the Redemption song. This, I think, is the last one to be re-recorded because, as I said, the first three, I believe, were all done using an iPhone, just on a real piano. But Esther's gone to a lot of trouble to re-record them properly using digital audio devices. And so the sound quality is so much better. And also you get a real sense of the scale of the piece. And I really feel the emotions. Debbie wants people to be redeemed and is feeling that through this music. She wants people to listen to this music. She knows that when it was passed through to me by Neil a number of months ago and then reinterpreted by Esther, that this was the sense of true redemption. So with that, thank you very much, and see you next week for the next episode.